Hey, what is going on? Ian here for the very first episode of Inside Indie. Now, again, so sorry for the late start time. It was originally supposed to be 7 p.m., but due to some, errors and some technical delays from behind the scenes, we had to move it to about 9 o'clock right now. And this is probably where it's going to be at for like future episodes at 9 p.m. since, I do have a pretty busy schedule on Sundays during the daytime. I figure at 9 p.m., everyone's, at home at least, they're kind of relaxed, they're ready for the sum up of the week. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the Toronto International Film Festival and what happened with the audience award for the top 3 films. And we are going to be talking about the film that I saw this previous week, The Wife. Now, we will get into The Wife later on in the show, but right now let's talk about Toronto. So yeah, the Toronto International Film Festival just happened. It ended today. I think it's going to end today, in fact. And they announced the top 3 films out of the festival. Now, in third place is the film Roma, which we discussed in last week's podcast. Go check out that episode if you haven't seen it already. Second place was If Beale Street Could Talk, which is directed by Moonlight author Barry Jenkins. And the first place winner this year was the film Green Book. Now, Green Book, funny thing enough, was a film that not a lot of people expected to do well at the festival. It wasn't talked about a lot. It wasn't like Boy Erased. It wasn't Beautiful Boy. It wasn't First Man. But what's interesting about Green Book, it's first of all got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes so far, and it stars Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali. So this is probably going to be a push from Universal to get Viggo Mortensen an Oscar at least, because he's been trying to get one for a good 15 to 17 years at least, maybe even longer, who knows. And Mahershala Ali was the Best Supporting Actor winner in the film Moonlight from 2016. By the way, very good performance. One of the best I've seen for sure. So yeah, this should be pretty interesting. But what really strikes this film for me, especially what's gonna really got my eyebrow raising, was that it's directed by Peter Farrelly. Now, that name might not sound too familiar to a lot of people, but he is part of the Farrelly Brothers crew who worked on films like There's Something About Mary and Kingpin. Now, those are gross out comedy films, and you wouldn't expect a guy like Peter Farrelly to work on, a film that's in the awards contenders category. So I'm very intrigued to see what he has in store for us. And I think he's one of the co-writers of the film, I believe. Yeah, he's one of the writers on it. And it's going to be released November 21st of this year, 2018. Now, I don't know if Universal's going to be doing a limited release first, or if they're going to be doing, a wide release. I think they're probably going to do limited release, but we'll see what happens. I mean, usually films that go on to win the People's Choice Award at Toronto end up getting Best Picture nominees. I mean, let's take a look at 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri last year. That was a very big awards contender. The year before that was La La Land. That swept up a bunch of awards. So, and Room in 2015. So, yeah, Toronto has a history of picking out winners for sure. American Beauty in 1999. You had Imitation Game 2014. I mean, it is pretty interesting. Let's see what's going to happen here for sure this year. Now, I don't want to talk more about If Beale Street Could Talk. Now, I've been excited for this movie ever since it got announced. Now, this is from the director of Moonlight, Barry Jenkins. It is only his 3rd film, and yet there is so much hype around it. Annapurna, believe it or not, is going to be the distributor of the film, and I believe it gets limited release November 30th. Let me just check. And just to let you know, If Beale Street Could Talk is an adaptation of the James Baldwin novel of the same name. It stars Kiki Lane, Dave Franco, Stephen James. Yep. Why did I say Kiki Palmer? It's Kiki Lane. Yeah. Sorry, people. It's late. Yeah, film's getting a limited release, I believe, November 30th. So 1 week after Green Book. It's so funny. I was on Gold Derby earlier today before this podcast was starting, and I was looking at the critics' picks for Best Picture. And what do you know? After Toronto came up, Green Book was in the top 3 or the top 10 for a lot of these critics. It's do people just look at the awards list and be like, oh yeah, that's gonna get nominated, whatever? We didn't actually see the movies, but whatever. Yeah, now just letting you know, I am going to be seeing Green Book at some point or another. I wasn't originally planning on seeing it, maybe because of Mahershala Ali, but now since it's in contention, I'm like, is it going to be really that good? So yeah, I'm very intrigued about that. And then Roma getting third place. Listen, Roma, I'm telling you guys, Roma's on a roll this year. If it wins since it won Golden Lion at Venice, it's just been getting all the praise. And and it's so interesting that First Man did not get in the top three. Neither did Boy Erase. Neither did Beautiful Boy. This is going to be intriguing for sure to see what's going to happen this race. A Star Is Born didn't get mentioned. Now, yes, I know there are other awards that at the Toronto International Film Festival. I can go into like the foreign language, short films, Canadian films, but I'm not going to go into those details since I do not have enough knowledge to talk about it. Again, maybe in a future podcast, I will get more people in that knowledge, in that field of expertise to talk about it on the show. But yeah, so my thoughts on this year's festival, I'm going to be seeing all three of those films for sure, especially if Beale Street Could Talk and reviews will be talked about on this show. So now, without further ado, let's talk about the big event of this show, which is The Wife. Now, The Wife was, funny thing enough, I actually saw it on a weekday. Funny enough, I didn't see it like yesterday or the day before or anything. No, I saw it on a Tuesday afternoon because that's when I could have time to go see it, really. And I wasn't having very high hopes for this film, despite the fact that Glenn Close, Jonathan Pryce, and Christian Slater are in it. All very talented actors and actresses. And yeah, well, there are other actresses too. Sorry. Anyhow, this film's an adaptation of the 2003 novel, the same name, and it's directed by, hopefully I get this right, Bjorn Rung. And this film, funny thing enough, actually premiered at Toronto in 2017. However, Sony Pictures Classics decided to release the film originally in August of 2018, specifically August 17th. They did a limited release run, and then they expanded it out to more theaters. I just so happened to catch it, not on its first weekend, but like a second or third weekend. So, yeah, The Wife. So pretty much it takes place. We got someone chatting right here. All right, so we got Kay Keefe here asking about Lord of the Rings, and nope, we will not be discussing that right now. We are going to be discussing about The Wife, but thank you very much. So anyhow, sorry for the interruption, people. So with The Wife, it takes place in 1993, and funny thing enough, it starts off in my home state of Connecticut. So Jonathan Pryce is an acclaimed author who gets a call from the Nobel Committee saying that he won the prize in literature. And him and his wife, played by Glenn Close, go off to Stockholm to go accept the prize. While in Stockholm, a biographer played by Christian Slater tries to get, the biography of, Jonathan Pryce. But, it doesn't really go that well, let's just say. And just to let you know, when I do reviews, I usually don't go into characters' names that much because, I don't really focus on character names. Rather, I focus on performances themselves. So don't mind if I just use the actors and actresses' names. Okay, so anyhow, let's continue. So while on the trip to Stockholm and during their time in Stockholm, there is some tension that goes on between Glenn Close and Jonathan Pryce throughout the film, and that's what's the whole driving force of the film. Meanwhile, you have both Jonathan Pryce and Glenn Close have a son, and that son is an aspiring writer, and he has some conflicts with his dad. And if there's one word I could really describe to encapsulate what The Wife has to offer to audiences, it has to be tension. There is so much tension throughout the film. I honestly felt like it was a tug of war because you could just tell when moments were going downhill. You could just tell when things weren't going right. You could just tell how much the relationship was on like a sinking ship. Like there is just, and it's so funny. There's not a whole lot of yelling in this film, and not at least till the very end. But The Wife, surprisingly enough, because let me backtrack here a little bit. I'm starting to get you guys a little bit lost. So let me explain why I ended up seeing this movie in the first place. I forgot to mention that. So my friends and I were at this theater in Stamford called the Avon, which, by the way, is a great theater. Highly would recommend checking it out if you're in the area. And so we went to go see, I think Won't You Be My Neighbor or Disobedience. But anyhow, so we were watching trailers, and we saw this trailer for this movie called The Wife. And it looked like it was typical Oscar bait, over dramatic acting, tacky music, a generic title. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm not going to see this. This is not my demographic. And then I started hearing that Glenn Close is probably going to be a Best Actress contender. I'm like, excuse me? A Best Actress contender? And so now like a Gold Derby, and these experts are like, yeah, Glenn Close, Best Actress. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go see this. And, I want a movie to talk about on this podcast, to talk about that's indie and art house related. Because let's face it, this time of year is dead for indie and art house films. You gotta wait at least another month in order to get the good stuff, or at least minimum 3 weeks for limited release. So I was like, you know what, I'll go see The Wife. Glenn Close is supposedly a contender for this, and I don't know if I'll ever see this movie because of that. So I went into this movie being skeptical. Let me just say, this movie was really surprisingly good. Like I said earlier, the tension is really what makes up this movie, but it is so well executed and it is so subtle at points that I think it really rewards the audience members a lot. Like, there is not a lot of things said directly between each character. You have to kind of look within the lines of the script, sort of. Like, it really treats the audience like they're intelligent in a sense. Everything feels realistic. Like, I feel like none of this was made up. I almost sort of believe that the main character one of the main characters played by Jonathan Pryce was an actual writer. I actually had to look it up on Wikipedia to see if it was real or not. Turns out it wasn't, but that's just how good it was in a sense. Now let's answer the big question right here. Do you think about Glenn Close's performance? Well, I did find it to be a very intriguing performance. I don't think Glenn Close is a lock-in for Best Actress. I mean, she does a really good job playing this, tired kind of, I don't want to say any more about this film, about her performance, because it would just give away so much of the movie. But let's just say that she is a very stressed out woman. She has had a very disturbed past. Let's just say that she's also very talented. So, but yeah, Glenn Close, I mean, I would probably maybe put her into running for Best Actress, but I wouldn't put it in a lock-in like Frances McDormand or Sally Hawkins from last year for sure. So yeah, we'll see what this year's Best Actress race is going to look like. I'm pretty sure it's going to be really good, but if it ends up being like mediocre to not great, I'll probably give Glenn Close Best Actress, but we'll see what happens. As for Jonathan Pryce, I think he really does give a great performance here. Like, the nastiness of his character and just the egotistical nature of the writer is just brilliant. I don't know how he does it. It just pulls it off so well. And Christian Slater gives a nice, decent supporting performance. He's not in the movie for that much time, but he really does provide the audience with something to relate to for sure. And yeah, the camera angles, I'm glad that they decided to go for single camera format in some areas, because I feel like if they would have stuck to the multi-camera setup, like, it would have been just too tacky, too cozy. Like, no, they do some things where it gets a little shaky at points, and which kind of gives it like that really underground feeling, like in Beach Rats. Yeah, I'm surprised for a film like that was promoted as like this typical, like, hoity-toity Oscar bait trash film that was meant just to trick people into thinking it's going to be a good movie. Was actually legitimately well written, well acted, and very clever with how they switch up the camera stylings at points. Yes, I say camera stylings because there are moments in this film, like I said earlier, that feel like very low budget indie films, when in reality, at other points, it felt it's like more high quality. So yeah, so The Wife, again, a lot of this film, I don't want to go into too much detail because, again, it's another one of those films that's all in the writing. It really is, but I would recommend checking it out if it's in a theater near you. So yeah, so that is my review of The Wife. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. So yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed it. Now, my only couple of nitpicks with the film were that, it was a little predictable at points, a little tacky, and then there were just some points that throughout the film I was like, really? You're going there in a sense? Also, some of the acting's a little over the top. I'm not going to point out where, but I think once you watch the film, you'll easily notice where it could be. So yeah, that is my review of The Wife. Now, what did you guys think of this movie? If you have seen it already, let me know in the comments down below. And for next week's film of discussion, we will be talking about the new Michael Moore documentary, Fahrenheit 11/9. And there's going to be actually an early screening in my area, and I will be seeing that early. So I will have a full review for you guys for next week's podcast. And speaking of which, for next week's podcast, you guys get to decide what the topic is going to be. I will ask you guys on social media what I should talk about on next week's show besides talking about Fahrenheit 11/9. And yeah, and I will certainly do that. So, till again, this is Ian signing off, and hopefully everyone has a great day. See you next week.